I mean, it was a terrific moment.
The same day England gets a new queen, England's new queen gets a message that 1 week earlier, the men on a mountain, some of them called Everest, decided to have a go at those last 3,000 deadly feet.
I planned 2 attempts, but we called them rather military fashion assaults at the time. And the first assault was to be made by Tom Bourdon and Charles Evans.
Tenzing, who wasn't chosen, said one didn't assault the mountain where Buddha lives. One made a pilgrimage. Tenzing wasn't British.
I think I personally was very hopeful that the 2 friends of mine would get up and would be successful. On the other hand, I really think that Tenzing felt that it was almost his right, in a sense, to be one of the first to the top.
Finally, Hillary and Tenzing spied the first team returning. This time, man had gotten within 300 feet of conquering the mountain before the mountain had conquered man again.
They did have, actually, I think, a little bit of an argument almost on the south summit. Tom Bourdon felt that they could push on, and Charles Evans, who was probably the senior member of the pair, he felt that they did push on, they would probably never return.
Now a beekeeper and a pilgrim would see what progress they could make. Tenzing, Hillary, and their support team were, for the next day and night, stopped cold by the cold and the wind. When you spit, says Tenzing, it becomes ice and falls like a stone. On the morning of May 28th, they started to climb. Slightly more than 1,000 feet from the summit, the support team headed back down, while above, out of sight of the camera, Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary pitched a tent on the edge of nowhere to wait till dawn.
Even establishing that camp was not easy. There was quite severe gusts of wind. But I think it was around about 4:30 in the morning that the wind had eased off, and I looked out of the tent door. I could see that the weather looked pretty good.
They were fortunate in having a near perfect day. There was nothing more than a breeze blowing across the summit ridge. We were very tense by then. This was the climax of all our plans and efforts on the mountain, and a high state of tension prevailed throughout the 29th.
The final ridge runs along towards the top, and about halfway along there's about a 40-foot high rock step. It really did 29,000 feet look pretty steep and difficult. But then I noticed a narrow crack, just large enough for me to sort of crawl inside. And I was able to wriggle and jam my way up to the top of the step and pull myself out panting. But once we got up that rock step, I really felt we're going to do it.
They climbed the mountain until there was no more mountain to climb. Hillary took this picture of Tenzing.
Tenzing threw his arms around my shoulder, and I threw my arms around his shoulder, and we gave each other a good hug. So in the end, we really were quite emotional when we got there.
For 15 minutes, man stood for the first time at the top of his world. What did he see? The beekeeper said the whole world looked spread out like a giant relief map. The pilgrim said all the hills below looked to him like Buddha gods.
Take my hand, I'm a stranger in paradise, all lost in a wonderland.
Nepal, India, Great Britain, the United Nations. They flew 4 flags up there, and which man was truly the first man up there? Hillary never said. Tenzing did. Tenzing said it was Tenzing. Tenzing said it was Hillary. Tenzing said it was you. Tenzing said it was me. What is known for sure is this. Soon after Tenzing and Hillary returned, an Indian Air Force plane flew close to the summit, then reported there was nothing to show man had been there, ever.
In a moment, our world continues.
Dangerous Assumptions, Spring 1953.
Welcome back to some legacies from the spring of 1953. Some of our most cherished assumptions were undermined that spring, assumptions about human behavior under stress and the deterrent value of capital punishment. And the jury is still out on one presumably unshakable assumption. What if Mount Everest comes up a little short?
Don't let the stars get in your eyes, don't let the moon break your heart.
Hillary and Tenzing may not have climbed the highest mountain after all. A survey indicates that Everest's neighbor, K2, might be higher. An American expedition will remeasure both peaks this summer and enlighten a breathless world.
July 53, the war ended. Truce, not victory. The U.S. Army decided to issue a code of conduct for American POWs. They were not to let foreigners wash their brains. The North Vietnamese tried and found most American brains hard to wash.
After their parents' execution, Michael and Robbie Rosenberg were adopted by a couple named Mirapole and took their name. In the 70s, they acknowledged their heritage, wrote a book advocating their parents' innocence, and continue to pursue that cause. Last year, John Walker and Jerry Whitworth were sentenced to life in prison for espionage on behalf of the Soviet Union. And 2 U.S. Marine guards at the American Embassy in Moscow have been accused of espionage. Ideology seems to have been replaced by sex and money as temptations to espionage.
Will not stop.
Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the theater. Jaws 3, 3D 2. And in this corner, the video cassette recorder. TV has its own enemy now. The little box is found in 40% of American homes, and it cuts into the profits of TV. Ironically, the sale of VCR rights is helping to finance new films and saving some Hollywood duds. TV Guide kept growing. Today it has the largest circulation of any magazine in the country. Never assume.
Well, there it is, the way it has been since last fall, and the way it will be for the next few months. 13 chapters of Our World are scheduled for rebroadcast between now and the end of the summer. But this is the last of the series that began last September. Our World has not been renewed for next fall. You have been faithful and eloquent supporters of Our World. You deserve better. I hope you get it. Thank you.
When Paddy Chayefsky wrote Marty in 1953, he believed that television would be the center ring of the 20th century culture. But he changed his mind, and so in 1976 he wrote Network. It's a satire on television in which the anchorman asked the viewer to get up out of his chair, go to the window, open it, and yell, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore." Always a great idea. Trouble is, every great idea has a flaw equal to or exceeding the greatness of the idea. And nature always sides with the flaw. Take Our World, a great idea. Our flaw was we didn't have enough audience. But just because we won't be here next year, that doesn't mean we weren't here this year. We were, and we are proud of Our World. It was about history. It is about to become history. Nothing is always. Thank you for watching. And by the way, if you wonder whether this sort of thing gets easier with practice, it doesn't. And so it goes.